Now it's time to hear the stories of Utes in their own words. This is Utes Insider presented by Pepsi. Here's your host, Mike Lageschulte.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. Some more football talk coming your way today as we get things started in the month of October. You might remember my conversation with Mike Wright back in late August as we talked about the 2008 Sugar Bowl season and Mike's role as a preferred walk-on with the Utah football program. Guys like him are so important to the program. Back in the early days of Kyle Whittingham, those preferred walk-ons coming on, under-recruited guys who eventually became starters, some of them star players, as Mike was for the Utes, and fun to catch up with him. So the show makes its debut, and then within about a week after that, I get a phone call from Robert Johnson. He said, Lags, heard the show with Mike. I want to come on and tell my side of the story from the 2008 season. I said, perfect. You were on my list to get to at some point anyway. Let's do this sometime in late September, early October. So that's exactly what we're doing today. Robert was one of my favorite players, a dynamic guy, big smile, charismatic, had a huge season for the Utes in 2008. 4 picks that year, 2 of them coming against Alabama in that Sugar Bowl win. But as great as he was as a player, the things he's doing now are equally as important. Robert, after playing 3 years in the NFL, has moved back to Salt Lake City. He now works for Northwestern Mutual, helping athletes transition to the workforce, and he's been a mentor to so many already. He's been involved with the relaunched Ute Academy, a program designed to develop Utah student-athletes off the playing field and prepare them for careers. And it's just great to see a guy like Robert, who was not, from Salt Lake. He grew up in California, came here to play, and now he calls Salt Lake City his home. Should be a fun conversation. Former all-conference safety Robert Johnson coming up in just a moment.
To hear more episodes of this show and other Utah Athletics podcasts, search for them on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Now back to more of Utes Insider presented by Pepsi.
He was an all-conference safety for the Utes from 2007 until 9 before embarking on a 3-year career in the NFL. And today, he's trying to help people like himself make the transition from playing to a professional career. Robert Johnson, Los Angeles native who now makes his home in Salt Lake City, has joined Utes Insider presented by Pepsi. Robert, appreciate you coming on and welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Mike, for inviting me. And I'm very proud and happy to be part of this show. But on top of that, just representing the University of Utah in general. So thank you.
Well, Robert, before I had you on, I gave the story to people about how you came on this show, and I started this thing back in April. I made a list of about 25 to 30 people I thought they would be great guests, and you were on my list. As it turns out, you heard my interview with Mike Wright, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and you called me up and said, "Hey, I want to come on the show," and I'm like, "Perfect! It's football season. You're on my list, but I just think it's cool that you've heard the podcast and wanted to come on." So you and I got to know each other when you were playing and I was broadcasting the games, and you and I can go a lot of places, Robert, with this. But first of all, I like to kind of start at the beginning with people. We've got plenty of time on these shows to dive deep into things, and Robert, guys like you are what is so cool about college athletics and Utah athletics, in that you grew up in Los Angeles. You came here to play collegiate sports, and now Salt Lake City is your home. We'll talk about that in a bit, but maybe just first of all, tell us how you ended up here. I know Klein Sataki was heavily involved in your recruitment, so what was his message to you, and what led to you deciding to become a Ute back in 2006, 2007?
Well, the funniest story kind of happens is that I was literally just texting some of my boys in a group chat about the story because Maurice Jones-Drew, one of my good friends, he asked me about, he said, "Roger, how do you wind up in Utah, man?" So it's pretty funny. I was literally just talking about it. It's just happened to be that I decided to go to the nearest junior college walking distance from my house, and I walked there. And my first year at Los Angeles Southwest Community College, I didn't play football. I just ran track. And then going into that second year, my brother Elijah, he's a year older than me, he talked to me about I should play with him because he was going to go to the junior college himself, and we should play one last time. And between all my older brothers and then my mom, they was like, we should play, so we did. And then it was fun. It was fun playing with my brother. I haven't played with my brother in a while. He played receiver, and I played a little bit of receiver and safety. So it was cool to kind of just have my brother on the team, and we ain't played in a while. And going into that last game of the year, Coach Sataki was there. We was playing against Citrus College. We was playing against Citrus.
Okay.
And then Coach was coming to support Josh Broughton that played corner, and he committed to Utah. And Coach Sataki was coming just to support him, just to be there at the game. It was the last game of the year. And I had a pretty good game. To me, it was a normal game. Like I had a touchdown on offense. I had 2 interceptions. And we wound up losing that game to Citrus 10-7. And they was undefeated. And this was the last game of the year. See, so it was it's just crazy how all that happened. And Coach Sataki walks up to me after the game and just like, hey, you played a good game, son. And anybody is like, do you have any schools talking to you because you're an awesome player? And I told him no. And I think for Coach Sataki, it kind of like set him back. Like he said, wait, nobody know who you are? I'm like, no, nobody. And then Coach just kind of like was like, wait, so do you have any film that I can just take with me that I can send back to Utah? And I'm like, no, I didn't make any film. Like I was just having fun playing, and then he asked me would I be able to ask the coach to get the film for this week? And he want to take it back to Utah. And he's just like, have you heard of Utah? I'm like, no, never heard of Utah. And then, and I think right after that, it was just like, I'm going to get this film and I'm going to take it. And I just was like, okay, I kind of just went with it. Like, okay, cool, whatever. And then a week later, like Coach Sataki comes back. He comes back to LA. And when he came back specifically for me. He came back and just was like, yo, dude, like we about to have our first round of recruitment, the first week of recruitment. And, we try to have our important recruits come in the first week, and he said, would you be able to come in? And I told him, yeah, like, I didn't know I was that important, but I said, if you give me a plane ticket, I'll come, and he said, cool. I already got a plane ticket there at the airport. And it was like, okay,
yeah,
okay, cool. I'm like, yeah, I was like, all right, like, okay, what now? And then I just was talking to my mom, like, somebody, like the dude from Utah said he got a ticket for me. And she was like, a plane ticket? I'm like, yeah. And I just remember her saying, did you pay for it? I'm like, no, I think it's supposed to be at the airport. And I was like, just take me. So she took me to the airport. Like, and this was like later on when Coach Sataki left and stuff, but we went to the airport and I just remember telling my mom, keep the car running. Like, who knows if there's really a plane ticket here? Like it's a guy that don't even know me and he paying for a plane ticket, growing up in the inner city.
Right.
Like, it's kind of how it is that you don't really see somebody doing something that's, to me, very expensive to get me to go to a state that I've never even been to. So, walked up and it is a plane ticket there. It really is. And I told my mom, I'm like, I'm going to go to Utah. And I just remember asking, like, you ain't never been on a plane? I'm like, no, I haven't, never even left my neighborhood. And I came up here to Utah. And when I came up here to Utah, it changed my whole perspective of life. And Coach Sataki, for him to take a risk on a kid from the inner city that when I first came out here, he let me know ahead of time. And I think that's why I built the trust with him so quick, because he told me on my first day here in Utah, he said, look, Rob, we don't have, at that time, I wasn't called Roach, I was called just Rob. He was like, look, Rob, we don't have a certain position for you. Like he said, I can't say that you're a receiver. I can't say you're a safety. We're going to test you out and kind of go from there. He said, would you still be okay with that? I'm like, yeah, as long as y'all paying for my school, man, I'll be here, and it worked out. Like, I think me having that attitude of, I just need to get my degrees, it helped me a whole lot with that trust of starting off with somebody brand new like Coach Sataki. And Coach Sataki showed that he really, really cared about me.
Wow, that's a great story. I knew bits and pieces, but not all of that. But, Robert, back then, that's kind of how the Utah program was built. It was the pre-Pac-12 era where now you can get more of the highly recruited athletes to come to Utah. But back then, there were a lot of guys like you where you came in as just an athlete, and you might play offensive side of the ball, defensive side of the ball, not sure where on defense. Depends on how much time you could put into the weight room. And we had a lot of guys like you who came in as raw talent, then you were developed, and the program thrived with guys like yourself coming in. It's just amazing that you were not really recruited at all. So obviously, to play in the NFL 3 years, you were pretty good. You were all conference in college. How did you end up so under recruited as a high school and then junior college athlete, where really no one was looking at you? That almost just doesn't seem comprehensible.
Well, I mean, when you're from Los Angeles, California. California got a lot of talent. It has a lot of people that's, like, hey, sometimes you got the money, you can go to these different camps, you can do different things. But with my story, it was always, it was pretty different. My road to where I was at was different. going back as far as like when my father was killed when I was about 6 years old, my mom took care of all 7 of us. So, the cards that I was dealt, I could have played that card of like, hey, my father not around, or I'm in a poverty area, things like that. I could have really played that to my advantage if I wanted to, and it's not really an advantage. It's just making up excuses from what I felt. But I guess I figured out a way to just handle what I can't control what I can't control. We moved around three different. I went to 3 different middle schools, 3 different high schools, and we moved around a lot. Whether it was didn't have the rent, or whether it was being kicked out. It was pretty normal for me to go to so many different schools. And when you're in the inner city, they don't have SAT prep classes. They don't even have driver ed classes at most of the schools I went to. So something as small as that. Growing up in the inner city, it means a lot when you get older or when you see something completely different. And when I came out here to Utah, I seen some of these high schools that I went to go do some speaking events at. I can see that they have some of these things that I wish I would have had back in high school. But it's just the way that it was. It's just how it happened. So for me, school was not something I was really interested in. I tried my best at it, but I wasn't the best. I always made sure to stay eligible for sports, always stayed eligible. But then I figured out a way to continue to play sports year round, whether it was football, basketball, or track. It's like I always made sure to keep those 3 sports with me because it motivated me to be eligible. Even though it was a C average eligibility, I made sure to stay eligible. It's just going to so many different schools, you fall under the radar.
Yep.
You completely, it's never a point of you being at one school as a freshman and you're doing really good. And, you getting the buzz for your sophomore year, and then your junior year, you really like, oh, you're killing it. Then senior year, you just got to make sure your grades is good and things like that. It was not like that for me. I went to one high school my 9th grade year, beginning of my 9th grade year, then went to another high school towards the end of my 9th grade year. I stayed there till the end of my 10th grade year, and then went to another school for my 11th grade year. And, then 11th grade year, I'm trying to build some traction. And then when I became a senior, I'm still trying to hope I could build some traction. And, it just wasn't happening like that. So that's the reason why I most likely fell under the radar, is because of just natural life situations of growing up in the inner city, where you just don't have the income to really be stuck at one school. And when you don't have it, you don't have it. It's just how it goes. You move, you get kicked out, you got to go to a new school that's closer. And California plays that boundary roles. You got to be within a certain boundary to go to a certain school. So by the time I moved out of the area, I had to go to the school that was in the area.
Robert, you and I have something in common that I didn't even think about till you just said this, talking about your father, Wayne Johnson. My father was killed when I was 10 years old, and I grew up in a small town of about 600 people. I didn't even live in the town. I lived on an acreage outside. There weren't a lot of people from my high school that went to college, very much a farming rural community, but people told me, hey, when your dad passed away, all of a sudden your level of motivation rose. You kind of realize, if I'm going to make this happen, I've got to find a way to do it. And so I went to college, and the motivating factor for me was there to do something for myself, because there wasn't the security blanket that some kids have. And I think you and I are similar in that we both kind of had to find a way to make it happen for ourselves. When your father passed away and you realize, what, my future is resting solely upon me, did that play a role in your motivation, your desire to just get things done over the years?
Yes, it did. I mean, it was watching my older brothers and not following their steps, but trying to learn from some of the mistakes that they made. Because when my dad passed away, when my dad was killed, I didn't really. I was at that young age where I didn't really know the difference. I was still really trying to identify myself as a young man, or as a little kid. And when it happened, you don't see the effects as much as a younger age. You start seeing the effects once you get a little older, where, like you said, your father passed away when he was 10.
Yep.
I guess I started seeing the effects at 10 years old, because, my father, he played a big role into that, like, Mom stay home, you take care of the kids. I go out, I work, I make sure to provide for the family. So soon as, he was killed, my mom she did go through, she struggled.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, just struggle with drug abuse, trying to just figure it all out. Because, me being older now, I started to understand it as looking at my mom. It's like, she had a big tragedy happen where her husband was taken away from her, and her husband was the full-time provider. So my mom went through that struggle of trying to figure out now what, I have all these kids, I have 7 kids, I got 5 boys and 2 girls. And now I'm like trying to figure it all out. And, working with something that she used to do before my dad. And now it's like, she's trying to get back into the working world. And, alcohol abuse was something that was pretty normal in my household. But, you get older and you start understanding that my mom was doing the best that she could. And the one thing that I would say is out of all 7 of us, none of us was any like bad crimes, any of us that went to like jail or do anything that was really big or really like bad. I mean, but it plays factors, it plays factors on things, and it matters how you look at it. And the older that I started to get, the more I started to realize that my oldest brothers, both of them played the biggest. Like, I got 3 older brothers, but my 2 oldest, they played a huge role into like keeping the family together and really, helping when things don't go as right, when your mom is intoxicated, things like that. It's life though, growing up in the inner city. It's normal. Like, to me, that was normal. That was normal for me. It wasn't anything too big where you go to a parent conference at the school, your mom is drunk at the school, or she shows up late. It's something like that you don't think about as a kid, because it's pretty normal in the situation, in the environment that you grew up in. So it did play a factor, but it was normal to have that, I guess.
Yeah, that is so well put, because when my father passed away, I was 10. I understood then what was going on, but as years went on, the more you became aware of your situation being a little bit different. And really, a lot of it doesn't happen until you get well beyond your growth years. Like, when you're in college, you become a young adult and become a parent yourself, and you start looking at yourself when you were that age, and you're like, oh, wow, I had no idea, because like you said, it just is the way life is. You don't know any different, so you just keep on going. But as you have a chance to have some self-reflection, it really stands out more those points when the circumstances force you to change. And wow, that's pretty amazing to have you tell your story about your mother and her struggles. And you're right, those single parents, especially in less than ideal circumstances, they just got to find a way to get it done. And the crutches they develop and the things they lean on to function, sometimes the choices aren't always the best, but it sounds like she did the best you could. Your family got through it, and you've done very well for yourself, Robert. So
thank you.
I appreciate you sharing that. That could be tough stuff to get into. Let's get forward now to your Utah years, Robert. So Kalani Sitake comes out. He's looking at another player to JUCO, sees you, gets you a plane ticket to Utah. So you arrive in probably January of 2007 for your visit, somewhere around there, and you decide to become a Ute.
I can go. Let me go back into that first time coming to Utah, because it's going to ring some bells with a couple of people when you hear this story. Because I came around Christmas. It was around Christmas. It was snowing. It was a story of the snow covered down and everything. But so I came, and this was the same year that the big incident happened here at the state of Utah, and it happened at the Charlie Square.
Oh yes,
yes. Now, see, so it is not funny, but it's a coincidence that the weekend that I came to the university, to the state of Utah, we went and we had our dinner at Rodizio's. That's there.
Yeah. That's
at the Charlie Square. We went there for Rodizio's, and then we went snowmobile driving and everything. Everything was great. I got back home, and when I got back home from my recruit trip, me and my mom watching TV. This happened. This probably like a week later, 2 weeks later. I'm not fully sure, but I know that the University of Utah was getting preparation for the bowl game. So it was around this time. And I just know that, have you ever heard the coincidence that whatever state that you go to, you magically start seeing these commercials or start seeing things pop up like on TV about where you went and things like that.
Yeah.
a coincidence happened is that me and my mom, we never really watched the news, but the news was on. As the news was on, it showed the outside of the Charlie Square, and it said, Utah. And my mom was like, "Oh, look, Utah's on TV," and it showed the train. It showed the train, and it showed the big Christmas tree. And I told my mom quickly, like, "Hey, we was eating there. Like, I was eating inside there, and they had this meat because I'd never been to Rhodesia's, I'd never been to like a real good a fancy restaurant. But I was like, they had this thing where you like flip the tab, and it's like it's red, it stops the meat. You flip it to green, and then it's like all the meat just keep coming out, and it's like all you can eat. I'm like excited telling my mom about it, and then as my mom is listening, or she's doing the normal parenting thing where she hears the kid talking, but she's still watching TV.
Right.
Pretty normal.
Yep.
So after I got done talking about this excitement about like, hey, they had this food here that was giving all type of different meats, she just was like, well, they have a death toll, a death toll being counted out. And I'm like, what? And she said, yeah, it was a big shooting that was there. And I'm like, no way. Like I was literally just there. And then my mom kind of like looked at me and just was like, are you sure you want to go there? Like, give me Coach Sataki number. So I gave her Coach Sataki number. She calls him and she's on the phone with him. And I heard her say, my son can get killed out here in LA. What? My son don't need to be coming to Utah, being killed in Utah with, the Christmas massacre, I guess they called it. And she said that, and she had Coach on speaker on our landline. She had him on speaker, and Coach was like, Coach Sataki said, Miss Johnson, this happens like probably like every 4 to 5 years, something crazy will happen in Utah. Like by the time your son get here and by the time he graduate, it shouldn't be anything that happened in between there.
Oh my goodness. And he's right.
And he's right.
Yeah.
And he's right. And it was just a crazy coincidence that happened. But yes, I came for the first time in around that time, like right before that scary scene of the Christmas massacre that happened at the Charlie Square.
I remember that. So when you say early recruitment, you were early in terms of the visitation. You came even before the first of the year and the whole preparations were going on. So, okay, you come for your visit. You join the Utes for the 07 season. You mentioned they said, hey, you're coming as an athlete. We don't know if you're going to play receiver or where on defense. At what point did they sort of lock in safety as your position?
It was going into the third week of camp, because I had an offensive jersey and I had a defensive jersey. I remember Coach Witt and at that time we had a practice A and then we had a practice B. So practice A, the players would be out there, and then the other players would be lifting weights. Then practice B, the players that was lifting weights go practice. The players that was practicing go lift weights. Now I just remember the first week that when Coach told me that, I was like, yeah, I'm cool with it. I'm fine with it. I'm okay with it. And the first day I had a red jersey and I was playing corner. The first day I was playing corner, and the first practice, I was playing corner, and then that was practice A. And then when practice B, I thought that I was heading in to lift weights. They said, no, we got a white jersey for you. So I went to receiver. On practice B, and I just remember we was doing one-on-ones, and I was tired. I was tired.
Yeah.
And I just remember Brent Castile was like, dude, all they do is got you running streaks. I'm like, yeah, I know. That's all they got me doing, just running streaks, because I was taller and I can run pretty fast, and it's like I can locate the ball. But
yeah, I
was so tired and so wore out. And then going into the second day, I went offense first. I went white jersey first. I played a little bit of tight end, I believe, or I was playing. They had me trying out so many different positions.
Yeah,
that it did get to a point where I was telling Coach Sataki, I said, I love being out here, but I don't know where the heck I'm gonna be playing. And then he was like, we're gonna figure it out. Like, don't worry.
Yeah,
we're gonna figure it out, and you'll be fine. And Coach Witt asked me what position I wanted to play, and he asked me that going into the second week, and I told him I would like to play safety. I would love to play safety, and he gave me a heads up about like, hey, you still got Steve Tate here. You got Joe Dell that's coming into his sophomore year.
Mm-hmm.
We already have that. We already have the depth set. But, if you bust your butt, we can figure out ways of getting you going. And, Coach Witt said that. And then I had to go tell Coach Sataki about it seemed like I don't know what position I would be playing. He just said, stick it out. You'll be fine. We're going to find something for you. Just stick it out and just be prepared for when your number is called. And that's how I went the first 2 weeks, is that I didn't even know what position I was playing. I just knew that I had a red jersey, I had a white jersey.
And you just went where they told you to go.
Yes, exactly.
I was hosting the coaches show at that time, Robert. I remember Coach Witt talking about you and also Sean Smith as guys who were kind of, receivers, defensive backs. We're not sure where they're going to play. They are just next level talent that we got to find a spot for them on the field. And Sean moved to defense as well after some time at receiver. It sounds like you settled in on defensive back and safety pretty early on that first year. And I remember your breakout game. So the Utes had a rough start. We go up to Corvallis. We lose to Oregon State 24-7. Brian Johnson, a quarterback, was hurt that night. Matt Alciata was hurt that night. Nothing went right in Corvallis. We come home, lose to Air Force in the conference opener by 8 when we had a chance to drive down and score. And the running back went to the wrong spot. I won't mention his name.
You're posting.
Yes.
Come on, I mentioned
you went there, I did it. So we lose that game and we're 0-2. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this could be a long year. Then UCLA comes to town. They're ranked 11th in the country for a Saturday afternoon game, and you guys played lights out. You take care of the Bruins 44-6. Tommy Grady was backing up for Brian Johnson, had a career day, but you, my man, made some just tremendous plays on defense. You had 2 interceptions, a pass breakup, but the play of the game, and maybe the play of the season, was a forced fumble you had that went to the back of the end zone for a touchback. So he took away a Bruin touchdown. Instead, Utah has the ball going the other way at the 20-yard line. You also, had a big play earlier in the game against the Bruins. You were just outstanding that day. To me, that was your coming out party. As you look back at that game, what stands out to you as the Bruins came into Salt Lake City?
Well, first off, Coach Sataki, he the one that kept me here, because that whole week, that week leading up to it, my mindset was almost like, hey, send me back. I told Coach Sataki, I said, man, you can send me back home if I'm not going to help the team lose. I remember telling him that, and he just was like, well, it's good that you said that because you're starting this week. I was like, wait, what? That's all I had to say. And Coach was like, no, we talked about it as a coaching staff. Like me, Coach Odom. At that time, Coach Odom was our safeties coach. Okay. He was like me, Coach Odom, and Coach Witt. We did speak about maybe change it up a little bit. How about, because UCLA is a throwing offense, how about we toss you in? So this would be your week that you can play. And I'm like, okay, cool. Cool. That's what I wanted to hear. And as soon as I said that, I remember walking back to the dorms at that time, and my mind was like, I'm playing against all the boys, like most of the boys that I did not get a chance to beat in high school. Because I know that UCLA picked up a lot of kids from Dorsey High School as well as Crenshaw High School. And those was teams I played against every year. Like, no matter what school I went to, I always wind up playing against one of them. And I never had a good result. So as I'm going back to the dorms, my mind was like, I'm about to play against some of these people that I didn't get a chance to beat. Hopefully I could play good. And Darrell Mack, me and D-Mac, we was in the dorms together my first year. And I just remember walking into the dorm, and I was excited. I told D-Mac, I'm like, bro, they started me, man. I'm starting this week. And he said, oh man, guess what? I'm like, what? They started me too this week. I'm like, oh, cool. So me and D-Mac was like, oh, we was walking to go eat at the Heritage Center that's up at the University of Utah. It's right by the dorms. Right. At that time we was walking to go eat. And then, me and him was just talking about things that we were going to do in the game and things like that. And Darrell Mack is one of my really, really close friends. And I love him to death, man. He's like my brother. For me to come in and stay with him at the dorm my first year, I think that was the best situation. Even though we didn't play the same position, and we'll leave at certain different times because he was a running back, and times I had to line up against him. But that week leading up to that game, talking to D-Mac, I think that even motivated me more, where it pushed me to another level, where it was like me and D-Mac is from California. He's from San Diego. And when I told him about some of the players I was on the team on defense at UCLA that I played against, and I wish that I could have won, I think D-Mac got a little bit of motivation, where he just was like, I got to look out for my dorm mate. I got to look out for my boy. And for me, I'm like, I got to look out for him. This is our first game starting, and we about to go, we about to get it in, we about to do what we need to do. And it worked out great, man. It worked out really, really good, where I had that opportunity, and I ran with it. at that time, I felt like Division I, this was one of the schools that did not want me on their roster because at that time there was Pac-10, so they seen all my high school games, and you know, my junior college was right up the street from USC. So, you know, this is a team that didn't want me. They didn't even like come to the backyard and try to get me out of their own backyard when it comes to being at a Division I, because they felt like I didn't fit. So for the University of Utah, they figured out a way for me to fit, and this was the game that opened me up. This was the game that pushed me. You know, that it made me feel good to be able to do it, to play that game.
You had a heck of a game, as I mentioned. 2 interceptions, the forced fumble for a touchback, a pass breakup, 6 tackles as Utah throttled UCLA that afternoon, 44-6 at Rice Eccles. I remember Darrell Mack that season as well. Great talent at running back. Utah, after that rough start, they went 1-3 after the loss at UNLV in the second conference game. After that, they got things righted, and they finished 9-4 overall, 5-3 in the conference with the big bowl win over Navy. You talked about some of the
UNLV game.
The UNLV game,
like,
yes.
Not to cut you off, that was like, you talking about, I reached my highest highs. You know, like I felt like I was on top of the world when I played against UCLA. And after that game, I'm like, oh man, like playing against these D1 players is easy. You know, I'm like, this is what I've been living for. And then I got an ESPN Player of the Week.
Yep.
They sent me a jersey. They sent me a sticker to put on my helmet. I'm like, yeah, you know, like I made it. In the next game, you know, I got about 21 tickets or 22 tickets from all my family to come down. And, you know, I'm asking all the players, like, please, can I borrow tickets? Like, this will be the first game my family get to see me.
Yeah.
And then that UNLV game, I dislocated my shoulder in the second half.
Yep.
The second quarter.
And that's
when we was getting destroyed. And it was a humbling experience. Like, I mean, like you reach your highest high, and then I hit my lowest low that game, where I was like, all right, this is not easy. You know, this is not an easy transition into the Division I game. So yes, that game was, it sucked.
Yeah, that was hard. You're right. You go from the highest of highs. You beat number 11 UCLA. Not just beat them, you throttle them. Then you go to UNLV, and then that game from the very beginning had a bad tone as the Rebels win that game 27-0. They brought Brian Johnson back late in the game, but it didn't matter because the damage had been done, and the team was just flat that day for whatever reason after the big win. You know, you mentioned Joe Dale. I want to point out Joe Dale had the pick against Navy to seal that bowl game win in San Diego in the Poinsettia Bowl. But, you know, going back to your role, Robert, you know, as I talked to the coaches that year, and I talked to Gary Anderson every week just to kind of get the lowdown on players and schemes, and they just said, you know, listen, this Robert Johnson guy is special. We've got some other guys playing in that defensive backfield that you mentioned, but Robert can make plays for us. We want to give him a chance, and you came in right away and made plays, and before long you had a spot that was locked down. So that first year you made 7 starts, even with that shoulder injury, as the Utes go 9-4 that year. But the season I want to spend some time on with you, Robert, is the 2008 season, and I talked to Mike Wright about this a few weeks ago. I want to spend some time on this with you as well. You were part of the core group for that special 08 season. People knew it could be a good year. I remember talking to Kyle Whittingham in his office in the spring of 07, and he said, you know what, we'll be good this year, but 2008, with the personnel we have, being seniors and juniors, and just sort of the way the roster's coming together, he felt all along the 08 season could be a special one. It turns out that it was 13-0. They win the Sugar Bowl that year. But, you know, going to that 2008 season, Robert, what was sort of the mood and the sense of the team of what they could possibly do in 2008?
Well, I mean, we felt I remember our first practice together when we had our start depth, and we was at practice, and we was going up against Coach Witt had us go up against the number ones. He had the ones against ones, and it was kind of strange because normally, you know, Coach don't do that. He don't put the ones against ones in any type of passing, any type of 7-on-7. He don't do that. And he did that with us with us defensive backs and the linebackers. You know, we was going 7-on-7. And as we was going on 7-on-7, we did start to realize that we can dominate the offense. Like we started to it was starting to get like a good feel where it was like, you know, like I'm looking like me and Joe. I'm like, you know, like I'm starting to get the good feel for Joe Dale because Joe was teaching me a couple of things, and our defensive scheme like kind of completely changed because at one point, going back into that 2007 year, at one point, you know, safeties was interchangeable. you wasn't really a free safety or a strong safety. You was just a safety,
right?
Where, like emotion and it's like that. But then me and Joe got to a point where, Joe was like, Robert, you stay back. Like I'll just what we call it. It was called rock and roll when you have to like move the safeties, where one safety go down, the other safety go back, and whenever it's motion. But we like completely cut off the rock and roll like that first week of practice, and that practice against the one-on-ones that day. Joe started to roll with the tight end. Like the tight end go to the other side where I was at, he rolls over to that side. Okay. And then it was like, okay, look, we're going to run cover 3 and we're going to run it this way. And, Joe started to roll with that and it opened up a little bit of doors. As the plays was coming, I started to realize that Mikey Wright was one of the smartest linebackers that we had. Not saying that he was smarter than all of them, but he was one of the smartest linebackers that put people in the right position.
You're right.
And then we had Sly, which was the wild card.
Yeah.
Sly was a safety, was an artificial safety, I say, that can play linebacker because he was fast enough to cover, but he was also good enough to blitz. But we wasn't blitzing him on that 7-on-7 period. So it showed, like, I'm like, wait, we got him. And then me and Sean, it was pretty easy to kind of have Sean on my side. If we run in cover 2, it's like they got to throw the ball. They got to throw the ball over you in front of me when you're 6'4", I'm 6'3". That's one of the toughest throws to throw. And it's like, it's not too many quarterbacks that can throw it that was in our conference. So me and Sean already was building a good reputation on how we want to play it. And then on the other side, I had Bryce McCain, and Bryce was just a 4.3 runner, just natural fast. He's a speed, a speed demon. Like, yeah, his height wasn't there, but he was a speed demon. So it made it better knowing that if we run a cover 3, like, I can lean on his side if I want to, but I know that he was fast enough to kind of play it deep. And this is the first couple of plays that we was going against our ones. And it's like, wait, we got some people. Then it's like Keppa Dyson was like really good. I'm like, Keppa is like really, really good. And this is before we even had any defensive linemen out there. This was just us kind of like playing. And I'm like, we look really good, going up against our ones, which is our starters. And it's like, we look really good. So I think our mindset started to change slowly as we start to see that we can make Coach Witt restart the period because we're killing the offense. That's what we start to understand, that Coach Witt will restart a period. If he see things not going right, he will restart it. But we started to realize that he's not restarting it because we're messing up. He's restarting it because we're dominating the offense. And that red line effort that Coach A put into us, like Coach Anderson was like, red line effort, like don't let nobody cross that goal line. We started to just like feel for it, and it started going really good. And then when the D lineman came, it was like, oh man, we got a squad. Like we got a real good team. We got Paul that's a quarterback that wound up being a DN, so he understood offensive lineman setups. And then you got Koa Misi that was just like the Tasmanian devil coming off the edge, that he was like very dominant. Like if he wanted to take over a game, he would take over a game. We already knew that. And then inside we had Greg Newman that was slimmer. He was for some reason unblockable. And then we still had our big body. We had our big body Kanape Eliopo. We had him, big body. He take up 2 blocks for sure. And man, at that time, we started to like understood that we had bodies, and then we had backup bodies that was even better that could be starters. Right. We had Terrell Cole that was my backup, where that season went back and forth with he's starting some games, I'm starting some games. You had RJ Stafford that was really good that could start. Then you had Brandon Burton that could start. Yep. And then thinking about the linebacker core, like even though he didn't play much, but Mo Neal would have been really good. Like Mo Neal was a backup, but he could have been really, really special. Yep. And then D lineman wise, we was stacked. Like Derek Shelby was a beast. Derek Shelby was coming off the edge as a monster whenever he got into the game or whenever we run our speed defense. And then you had Nai Fotu that we had to put in a special package for Nai because Nai was just like another Koa Misi, where if you put them on separate sides, somebody's going to get to the quarterback. Yep. So I don't know. It's just like as the week start, like as our days start to go on, we did start feeling very, very confident. And we had the producers videotape us too. They was a recording our undefeated season, and we knew it. And I think with the cameras being on, we started to understand that every day at practice was a game time, a game time for us. Like somebody is watching because they recorded. We didn't know what they was recording, but we knew that it was cameras out there, and we didn't want the offense to score.
I love it. You're right. There was a film crew there from day one. From day one of fall camp,
Yep.
They were there to record the whole thing because everyone had this sense that, you know what, 9-4 a year ago, keep people back. This could be a special season. And with the schedule lining up, well, I'll talk about that in a minute. But you mentioned this defense, Robert. I mean, 9 guys on that defense made it to the NFL. Paul Kruger, Cole Meese, Derek Shelby. You had Sly, yourself, Sean Smith, Bryce McCain, R.J. Stanford, Brandon Burton. You know, Sharif Shah, before he was a coach, used to do the radio broadcasts. And I worked with him for 3 years, and he would watch his defense fly around. He said, guys, listen, this group is special. And at that point, you don't know how many guys will move on to the NFL. But just watching this group come together, he could kind of see what was there. Now, of course, coaches defense very well, but the pieces were in place. And, you know, a lot of people remember the offense that year, Robert, for how they ended up against Alabama with, you know, scoring the first 21 points against Bama in the Sugar Bowl, and the way they played with 48 points rolled up against BYU. They scored 63 at San Diego State, but there were a lot of close games that year where the defense had to come to play, and they did every single week. I want to talk to you specifically about some games. Let's start with that Michigan game at the Big House in Ann Arbor. You talk about an opener, lots of hype, but you guys go to Ann Arbor and lose that game. All of a sudden, the hype goes away pretty quick. You guys won that game 25-23. I don't care where you grow up. Everyone knows about the Big House in Ann Arbor. For you guys to have that as your first game that you're looking at all spring and all summer, to go there and get that win the way you did, what did that mean to the start of that season in terms of your motivation all summer, spring, and so forth, and in terms of just getting you off to that start that you needed in 2008?
Defensively, we already knew that we was going to dominate that game. Like, they had a new offensive coordinator, and then they had this running back that I think his name was Moody. I can't remember what this running back was. I just remember I was watching this freshman running back on film because at that time we didn't have good film on the new offensive coordinator.
Well, Rich Rodriguez was a first-year head coach. So Rich Rod comes in from West Virginia with this offense that Michigan had never had before.
Exactly, and we felt that we could match up man to man with whoever they had. We already felt that way. Like we as a secondary already had a good feeling that we can match up with anybody that's on their team. We can match up with them. The only person that we couldn't match up with was the running back, the freshman running back. And we was trying to find film on this running back, and we found a couple, and we just knew that this running back was very athletic. He do backflips with his shoulder pads on. We knew that much. That he could score and do a backflip, but we did not. We was like prepared for, if we shut down the pass and make them run, then we can maybe get a little bit of 3 and outs, and then go from there. And I just remember Coach Pease. I remember Coach Pease at that time, John Pease. He came out of retirement, and he was the D-line coach a little bit. I just remember him leading up into that week as we was preparing for it throughout the whole summer. But that week of practice, he said it straight up to the defense. He said, "Hey, we need turnovers. You get turnovers, you give your team up, you give your offense more opportunities to score, and it takes the crowd out of the stadium. It takes everything out." And when he said that, I think us defensive players, we started to realize we had a lot of offensive weapons on defense, where Sean played running back at one point and played receiver. I played receiver at one point. Sly at one point in high school played tight end. Cole at one point played tight end. Yeah, Paul Kruger played quarterback. Bryce McCain played a little bit of running back. Joe Dale, he played a little bit of running back. So we started to understand, like, maybe if we can get to the ball, we can make some plays. And Coach Pease was the one that was really pushing that, where it's like, the only way that y'all going to have a really good defense is if y'all just get turnovers. The more opportunities you give the offense, the better chance you got a chance to win. And we pushed it. And that week, man, we knew for a fact coming into that game that the game will be won by us on the secondary side.
Yeah,
it would be won by us. We already knew that, because that passing offense was crazy when the coach was in West Virginia. That passing offense was very, very dominant. But we felt that we can run. We felt like we could stick with any of the players, and we had some good matchups that we wanted.
Coach Pease, I loved him because I was sitting next to him in the press box at the spring game and so forth and practices after he retired. And he'd have all these stats about, if you have more turnovers, your percentages of winning increased by this much and all these things. But you're right. He was a guy who's like, hey, we need to make some plays on defense. It's not just about being solid and getting off the field. It's like, no, we need to go make some plays. And he really got you guys locked in on that. You win that game in Michigan, 25-23. It was much more lopsided than that. I mean, Utah, I thought, dominated that game. Michigan got some things going late and came back and tightened it up. But you win that one. You take care of UNLV, Utah State, tight game at Air Force. You dominate Weber State at home, although some guys got a little bit of a breather that week against the Wildcats.
Yeah.
But the game to me that kind of really started that season after the Michigan game was the win against Oregon State at Rice-Eccles. They had just defeated USC, who was ranked number 1 the week before they come in. Sakota makes the game winner. They had a little bit of a mismanagement issue, Robert, with their offense late in that game. They gave the offense a chance to come back and not just get a touchdown to tie, but also a chance to win the game in regulation as Utah wins that one 31-28. To me, that's where the stretch run of that season really started. What do you remember about that matchup against Oregon State on October 2nd?
For me, I almost allow my personal achievements to override the win that we had. So during that whole season, me and Coach Scally was bumping heads.
Yeah.
So that game was very important to me. It was very important to me because I'm playing against a Pac-12 team. I mean, a Pac-10 school at that time. So to me, people at home will be watching it. Coach Scally benched me the first quarter. The first quarter of that game, as well as the third quarter, he benched me, and I was definitely like heartbroken about not being able to play and not having a clear answer to some of my teammates. So I was asking me, Roger, why you not in the game? While I'm on the sideline, like, why you not in the game? I'm like, I don't know, and it was because of weight issues and some school issues, a little bit of school issues, and anything that was off the field was the reason that I didn't even play that game. So the victory was great. I was happy for it, but I felt like I could have made a much bigger impact that game if I would have played more. But that was a personal thing for me. But the game was great, though. I was still happy that we won. I was really proud and just happy how everything turned out. I just wished I would have had a bigger impact. That's all I would have wished I would have had.
Let's go forward now to the TCU game that year. Another big Thursday night game as the Horned Frogs come in, a couple top 15 teams. You had a bigger role in that game as you made the game-ending interception and the win over TCU, 6 tackles that night. It felt big that night at Rice-Eccles because people got a sense, okay, we're down to the final 4 games. We're undefeated. We've got a chance. This is kind of the pivotal game. What do you remember most about that matchup against TCU?
We felt on defense, it was a defensive matchup. We felt that a lot of people in the conference was talking about how good Jerry Hughes and his defensive crew was.
Yep.
And it was like they wasn't giving us no credit. It was like they got to give us some credit. And our thing was, if we can get these black jerseys, that's what we were saying on defense. If we can get these black jerseys, we can like go out there and be like looking good and play good. And I just remember that week leading up, we wasn't sure if we was going to get black jerseys or not. We had a couple of petitions being signed. I just remember Dr. Hill was saying everything is going to work out. I'm going to stand on the table for the university when it comes to some of the meetings and say we need to get black jerseys. And nobody was sure what was going to happen. Nobody was sure. And then we seen the black jerseys that night. And we seen the black jerseys because we seen the pants. We got our pants on, but we didn't see the jersey. We seen our pants. So we was like, wait, we might be going black. We might be going blackout, And then we just remember that the night before, it was like, yeah, it's going to be a blackout game. And It's like, then it's a blackout game and it's Halloween. It's around Halloween time. And it was like, oh, yeah, we about to do good. And then when we go into that game, we did think to say that we the better defense than what they had. We know that they had a special defense because they ran a special set. They didn't run a normal defense. They ran something where you had 3 safeties. You had like a rover back, and a safety, and you have a rover, which is basically a slide. That's what I was like. That's all it is a slide. It's a linebacker. It's somebody that's fast enough to play safety, but it's a little bit bigger to play linebacker. That's all it is.
Yep.
And when we went in, we was like, okay, we know that we're the number 1 defense. So if we do what we need to do against Andy Doden, we should be good. And we played bend, don't break defense the whole game. We played bend, don't break. And what I mean by that is that if you can remember, I know you remember that game. They missed a lot of field goals.
Like they missed 2 in the second half. Yeah, that were big.
Things could have changed if they would have made those field goals. But we played bend, don't break, because it was times that their speed did shock us. Like some of the fast players that they had, like it did kind of changed up a lot of our game plan. But we felt like in our heart that, hey, bend, don't break at the first half. We kept saying like, hey, they getting yards, but they're not getting touchdowns.
Yep.
That's what we want. Don't give up 7, or don't give up 6, give up 3. Because we know that we had King Louis on our team. So it's like, if we give up 3, Louis can come back and the offense can get 3. And it's like, if we can get turnovers and get into that field goal range, that's another 3. And our mindset turned into, this is like the Michigan game. As long as we get turnovers and we get into field goal range, you can win on field goals. It's tough to do it, but you can win on field goals as long as the defense is bending, but don't break.
You guys fell behind in that game 10-0, and you talked about the speed TCU had. Gary Patterson at that point was starting to really build that thing into what it became in the ensuing years, but they jumped on you guys right away. Their kicker, Evans, the freshman, made an early field goal, but missed 2 in the second half. One was why I think he overcorrected, and the mental game started to play their tricks a little bit with that young kid, and he missed another one wide opposite way. Otherwise, they get 2 field goals, and they win that game 16-13. But the defense also, Robert, made some plays. Gary Anderson would call up some pressure, and they were in a situation where it's like, okay, don't get the first down, but this is a makeable field goal. All of a sudden, a sack moved them back and changed the distance or changed it to a punting situation. And I thought Gary made some great play calls that game with the defense. You guys pitch a shutout after falling down 10-0 in the first 8 minutes of the game. It changed from there. Dakota makes a couple field goals, and then the touchdown pass to Freddie Brown from Brian Johnson to win the game. The 2-minute offense at that point, really, to me, is where it became what it was the rest of the way as you win that game against TCU. And I talk about the points start to pile up. You score 63 at San Diego State. You only give up 14. BYU, Maxwell comes in. He's giving it away with turnovers. You got one in that game as well against the Cougars to win that last game, 48-24, and that completes the undefeated regular season. And then you get the bowl matchup. I remember sitting at the bowl party, and it's like, who are we going to get? We were pretty sure we were in. And then the matchup comes up, Sugar Bowl, Alabama, a team that was number 1 in the country 5 weeks that season, playing them down in their home turf in New Orleans. Robert, going into that game, Utah was a 17-point underdog against Alabama. What was sort of the mood around the team and the outlook going into that Sugar Bowl matchup?
I mean, we wanted Florida. We wanted Florida because we felt that Coach Witt deserved to have Urban Meyer. Yeah. That's what we wanted. We wanted Florida, and we pulled Alabama. And when we pulled Alabama, it was exciting. It was very exciting. And then when we realized that New Orleans was pretty far, our fan base is amazing. I mean, like that year, our fan base, between the Muss and all the fans that was the season ticket holders, or the ones that or the fans that was just there for those games, those home games, it meant a whole lot for us on defense. And, every time I see a fan that's a season ticket holder, I stop everything I'm doing and tell them I appreciate them and really thank you for building our stadium. Because our stadium would not be anything without the fans that's there, and our loyal Ute fans, the Muss section, the mighty Utah student section. Those are important pieces. And for us to go all the way down to New Orleans, we did not know how it was going to go. We was like, how will fans get out there? And with the state of Utah when it comes to when it comes to the big tradition of the LDS here. Down there in New Orleans, it's a completely new world. It's a crazy situation, and we wasn't sure if we was going to get all the fans that we wanted. We wasn't sure, but we knew that we was going down there, and we knew that we was playing against a powerhouse. We knew it was going against a powerhouse, but Coach Anderson, he came up with this plan that he explained to us is that speed overweights power. Y'all got the speed. If y'all can use your speed, you don't have to worry about the power part, because if you can speed them out, they won't be able to recover from just anything that's speed, because we all knew and understood that none of us played Like none of our body type was fit in a position. Like
Right.
none of our body types really like you didn't see Koa and be like, okay, Koa fit that DN setup, or you didn't see Sly and like Sly fit that linebacker setup, or Paul Cougar, or me in general playing safety, or Sean. Like the prototype corners just started to build up to where Sean's size was at that time. So it was more of like, hey, we don't fit the position, but we've been making it work all year. We've been making sure that it works, and Coach Anderson been putting us in those positions to be great. And that week, the game plan, he came up with this really, really good game plan. And the game plan was just like run them out of speed. Like let's get them with speed and see what happens. And then a night before the game, I just remember their All-American tackle that they had, Andre Smith. He was talking to an agent, and he got suspended the night before that game.
That's right.
So, yeah. So he got suspended the night before that game, and then I just remember Coach Anderson was like, okay, look, we're gonna light up his side. We're gonna light up his side and see what happens. And it was like, Koa, can nobody block you on their team? Like Paul, can nobody block you? But if we send Sly and we send Kepper Geisen like around like just the different sides, they won't be able to stop all of y'all. And Coach Anderson just like we lit him up the first quarter. Like we lit up all of Andre Smith. His I think he was right tackle. Like whatever it was, we made sure to just light up where he's supposed to be at and like force Alabama to do something different. And then they tackle got hurt. The sub, he got hurt during the game, and they wind up shuffling a couple of their offensive linemen. And in the second quarter, Coach Anderson was like, all right, we're just going to blitz them out. We're just going to blitz them out at this time. Let's just blitz them out and see what happens. And we blitzed them out like pretty much the whole first half. We tried to blitz we blitzed almost every down, and we ran a lot of cover zero. I'm normally never sticking the tight end that close, and we ran a lot of cover zero that game. I got an interception off of cover zero. So, Coach was sending everybody, and, a cover zero, just to explain that a little bit, a cover zero is basically you send everybody, and the DBs have to stick the skill position. So it's corner, man-to-man. So you had Sean Smith, man-to-man on Julio Jones.
Yep.
You had Bryce McCain, man-to-man on, I think that was Mays. His last name was Mays. That was over there on that side. And then you had me man-to-man on either the running back or the tight end. And then you had Joe Dell man-to-man on either the running back or the tight end. But everybody else, so Koa Misi, Koa's blitzing, Paul blitzing, Mikey Wright, Sly is going, Kepper Guy, everybody else is going. So it was like leaving us on the island, but we felt that somebody's going to get home and he's going to make mistakes. The John Parker Wilson kid was going to make mistakes, and he did. He made a lot of mistakes, but Coach Anderson came up with that great game plan where we zeroed out a lot of plays that game.
They had some receivers. Jones, Coffey had 4 catches. You're right. They had some talent, but yeah, John Parker Wilson sacked 8 times, 3 by Sly. You had the 2 picks, and a team that came in averaging 196 rushing yards per game was held to just 31. I remember that game. My spotter board looked like a 5th grade coloring project because, their offensive line, they had guys all over the place. I forgot about the suspension of Smith. We were told he's not playing, but we didn't know why at the start of the game. And then you're right, the injury and that thing was just a patchwork the whole night. And once we got up 21-0, it was a chance to kind of just say, let's pin our ears back, guys, and come after John Parker Wilson and get after it. And you guys just dominated. Such an impressive performance and such a cool way to end a special run, to be the only undefeated team in the entire country that year at the FBS level. Said a lot. To be the team that was ranked 4th into that bowl game. They were number 1 5 weeks that season, to finish number 2 in the final polls. Some people argued, hey, Utah should have been national champion. You mentioned the matchup with Florida that didn't happen, but you guys you did all you could do. You won every single game in front of you. You made the statement win against Bama at the end. As you look back, Robert, as we talk about time, giving you perspective on things, that group of guys, what stands out to you the most about that team? And it might be things that happen more so off the field than on, but what do you remember most about your interaction and your relationships with those guys on that defense in 2008?
Hands down, we made each other accountable. We all made each other accountable. And more of like the off the field stuff, like, players looking out for players. The biggest thing that happened for my experience was the Air Force game, going into that Air Force game, we was down.
Right.
It was a couple of offensive possessions that gave up points. So we were on defense, and we're not used to seeing an interception to the house or a fumble to the house. It's like, wait, like, we're not even on the field, and we're giving up points, and we had a big moment that happened during that game, and like the inside scoop. I'm surprised Mikey didn't even mention this, but it was a big moment that happened in that Air Force game where Sean Smith gave up a touchdown.
Yep.
And Sean came to the sideline, and I specifically remember Joe was like, "Dude, what happened?" Like Jodell asked him what happened, and he said, "Oh, it's nothing." And, and he kind of like put his head down. And that's when, like, he didn't put his head down. He just was like, whatever, like, it happens, whatever. And I just remember Joe like ripping into him, and Sean ripped back into him, and then all of a sudden, the linebackers are saying something to some of us safeties about some of the things we're doing, and then some of the D linemen saying things. It's like we had a big family argument among brothers, like on the sideline, and I believe the coaches seen us arguing, but they didn't say anything to us. They allowed us to argue, and it almost came to blows, like on that sideline, and it was more because we was down. But it was a lot of things that just wasn't going our way. And it was against Air Force. And it's just like little things just wasn't going our way. And I just remember us arguing on the sideline. And we was arguing to a point where it seemed like it was going to be somebody that's going to be benched. And somebody on the team was going to say he can't play no more, like things like that. And then I can't remember what happened, but it was a quick change of events. Either Brian threw an interception or something happened. And we had to quickly get back out there on the field. So we got back out there on the field, and the rest of the game, we was not really talking on defense. We wasn't really talking. We was just doing our job. And I think what happened is that the coaches seen that we argued it out like brothers. We all have different opinions. We all alpha males, and we argued it out, but we got back and we focused on still like getting the job done, even though we wasn't really happy with each other at that moment. We still focus on getting the job done. It's like we still got to look out for each other on the field. Now, on the sideline, people wasn't really paying attention to the defense on the sideline, but a lot of us wasn't talking to each other after that moment. It just seemed like the defense kind of split apart, where it's like you got your group, we got our group, and the safeties, we together, the corners together, the linebackers together. It felt that way on the sideline, but when we got on the field, we made plays and we made things happen. And I think that was like the biggest turning point of that season for us on defense, is that we got to a point where we was able to argue with each other, but then we also knew we had one main goal, which was like, hey, we want to be number one on defense. We got to figure out a way to make it happen. And the only way games will be won is if we give up points. So we don't give up points, we win games. That's just crazy how that all happened. Like that one game kind of just like opened up the doors for us showing how much we cared about each other on a different level.
I love that story because sometimes as parents or coaches, you say, you know what, we're going to let the kids work this out amongst themselves. Let's just see if they can figure it out. You kind of just stand back and you're watching in case it gets really ugly. But if it's just kind of a semi-manageable ugly, you're like, you know what, let's let them work it out. And that brought you guys together.
I believe that's what happened.
Yeah.
I believe that's exactly what happened, because even in the TCU game, that big critical sack that we had where we blitzed Andy Doden, and Sly jumps over the running back. Doden tried to escape to the other side, and Paul Cougar get the sack, and then we take him out of field goal range and they have to punt. Like that play, we called a timeout right before that play. And when we called a timeout, Coach Anderson basically like said, hey, so what defense do y'all want to run? Like he basically just said, what defense y'all want to run? And it was like, wait, we want to blitz them. He said, look, if y'all going to blitz them, get home.
Yeah. He
said, whatever it is, if y'all going to do this, y'all stick together and y'all get home. And we went back to the huddle, and I just remember we was thinking about calling flip dog. Right? That was one of our cover. That was one of our blitz coming from the strong safety coming from the outside. But then when you have a slot receiver on your side, you pass it to your linebacker. So we had a slot receiver on our side, and we passed it to Sly. So Sly wound up blitzing, getting home on Koa's side, and Koa and Sly got to Andy, and as he tried to roll to the left, or he tried to roll out of it, he rolled right into Paul Cougar. But that was a defensive call that we called among each other. Like we was like, we can make it work. And Coach Anderson was like, hey, as long as you get home. He said, I don't care how you do it, get home. That was the biggest thing when it comes to running blitz. Get home.
There you go. And it all worked out quite well. Again, the Utes in 2008, 13-0. They won the conference championship, finished as the number 2 team in the country. You know, Robert, with the shutdown due to COVID, there's been a lot more time to talk about sports and less time to watch sports. A lot of conversation in the Salt Lake City media about who was a better Utah football team, the 2004 squad or 2008. Make your argument and your case for me to say why 2008 was better.
I'll make it simple. Defense win games. That's just how it goes. Defense win games. The offense put fans in the stands, and their offense was very good. Alex Smith was really good on offense, but we felt like we could match up with them. We can hang with them. Like our defense, we felt we can hang with that team. Like it's nothing more. It's nothing better than getting interceptions and scoring on defense. And we felt like we had players that can get interceptions, cause fumbles, and score.
Yep. A lot of that year. A special group. That defense, as I said a few moments ago, had 9 guys who eventually moved on to the NFL. You were one of them, Robert. So let's talk about your pro career a little bit. 3 years with the Tennessee Titans from 2010 to 12. You were a 5th-round draft pick. That's in itself an amazing story to go from a guy who was at the JUCO level, essentially not recruited by D1 schools, to go from being that guy to a 5th-round draft pick. You know, as you're going through your pre-draft workouts and getting a sense of where you might go and who was interested, were you surprised you went in the 5th round, or kind of what were your thoughts going into that draft, and compare those to how things turned out during that 2010 draft?
I didn't even feel like I was going to be drafted because I wasn't invited to the combine. They didn't invite me to the combine. All-Star game, I got accepted to the Texas All-Star game, where it's Texas versus the nation, and then Myron Rowe dropped out of the East-West Shrine game, and they wind up saying, "Oh, I can come," because Sly was there and David Reed was there. It's like, "Oh yeah, you can just come." But, okay, cool. So I played it in, but I honestly didn't feel like I was going to be drafted. I did knew there was one team that really liked me a lot. It was the Chicago Bears. They liked me a whole lot. They came to the pro day, and then the next day they bought me a plane ticket to fly up to Chicago, and I did a full day of an interview as well as a physical. And then they came out to LA, to Los Angeles, California, where I was training at. They came out to LA like a week later, and I just knew I was going to be a Chicago Bear. I'm like, I think this is really happening. And then I wind up having other pre-setup visits where as soon as I went to Chicago, the next one I had lined up was going to Miami. And I went to Miami. Sean, as well as Sean and Cole was there. No, Sean and it was Sean and Paul Solia. They was there. Like Sean Smith and Paul Solia was there. So they kind of walked me through everything. And and like for me, I did felt like I was going to be in Miami too, because I'm like, well, I didn't feel like I was going to be in Miami. I felt like I could be very successful in Miami because Sean was there. Sean and Paul Solia was there, and they had a lot of Utes. They love like pulling in Utes, and them being on defense, I knew that I can catch on to the defense fast, and I understood Sean. So Sean was a starter, and I'm like, I can easily fall into that starting role at safety, and Sean would definitely help me because I know how he played. So, I went to Miami, and then I turned around and went to the Houston Texans. And at that time, Bryce McCain was there with the Houston Texans.
Right.
But it was a crazy story, a crazy situation where Coach Kubiak, he was the head coach of the Houston Texans. His son played at Colorado State as a safety.
Okay.
And it was just a coincidence that me playing in the East-West Shrine game, his son played in the East-West Shrine game. I remember specifically talking to Coach Kubiak, and I didn't even know that he was the head coach of the Houston Texans. So it was just crazy how things kind of worked out where they brought me in for a pre-draft visit. And I met him. I was like, dude, I remember you. And he said, yo, you went to dinner with my son and things like that. So yeah, I did a pre-draft visit at, like I said, Chicago, Miami, Houston Texans, and then Seattle Seahawks. And the only reason I went to Seattle Seahawks is because Pete Carroll, he knew of me growing up, and he knew of me. That's all I can say. He knew of me, yep. And it just was a shake of the dice where it's like he just left USC, and it's like I remember hearing this dude name in LA, and he brought me in, and he wasn't even bringing me in for draft. He was talking to me about a free agent deal, about being able to be a free agent there. So.
Yeah, you're right about Miami. I mean, you had Steve Fafita, you had Paul Soliai,
Also,
Sean Smith, Koemisi. There's a long line of guys.
Came later.
Yeah, who came into that Miami Dolphins system from the U of U. But to play 3 years, listen, at the next level, the NFL is tremendous. 2010 to 2012 was your career, 19 tackles and a pick during your time in the NFL. What was it like for you? I mean, you look back at 3 years at the pro level. What do you remember the most about that experience?
It didn't go the way I wanted it.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. It didn't go the way I wanted it. I love Tennessee. Tennessee Titans was, once again, they was just like Coach Sataki. They took a risk on me. And Coach Fisher, what happened is that the coaching staff changed a lot. And throughout the years, the Tennessee Titans we was in the process of trying to find the winning combination. That's what I will say.
Yep.
So, first year I had Coach Fisher. He left. He got fired after my first year. Then I wound up getting Coach Munchuk. And then my role as a free safety changed up, where it was like, you got to be a strong safety now. So I had to put on a little bit more weight. And then that role wound up changing going into my third season. And it was a lot of moving pieces. Like, I wound up learning three new defensive schemes, and had two different defensive back coaches. I had three different head coaches. It was a lot. It was a whole lot. The more I think about it, it was a lot of things that was happening. But I didn't enjoy it the way that I enjoyed playing at Utah, and I think that was the biggest regret that I had when I was playing in the NFL, is that I understood it was business, but I was always playing on the edge. I always had fun playing on the edge, as in me letting my football IQ just take over, and I'm just doing things. When I got to the NFL, I started to box myself in, where, I've seen things happen, but I didn't want to jump to it because I know that I was a rookie, or I knew that I was new to the defense, or things like that. And that hindered me a lot, because I was unable to play Rojo ball. I was unable to do it because I felt like every time I made a mistake, I was going to be set on the bench. Yep. So it was times that I'm not saying I don't play within the system, but it was a lot of times that just natural football IQ would just take over, and my body and movements would just go with what my mind is telling me and what I see. And Coach Sataki, Coach Anderson, Coach Scally, they got to a point where they started allowing me to do it, and I was making plays. I wasn't really making a lot of mistakes. I was making a lot of plays. And when I got to the NFL, I had to figure out a way to play within a system. And it was a lot of leashes that was on me. I say, like, you give me a leash, and it's like, you can only go so far. So, I had to play within the system, and my career didn't work out the way that I wanted it to. It didn't. And it sucked. It sucked because I want the win so bad. And when you get to a losing organization, or an organization that's trying to identify themselves, it's a rebuilding. It starts to rebuild. And I was at a University of Utah where the winning was normal, and winning was something I was used to. Then I get to NFL, and it seemed like the losing, it did affect me. But then when you have some of these veterans that's money, I'm not saying any names on that, but when you have some vets that's caught up on money, they forget the concept of, like, when you was playing football, you wasn't getting paid for it. All you knew about was wins and losses. And now it's like, you take a loss, you take an L, and you just like, okay, it's fine, I still get paid. And I'm like, man, I wasn't used to that. My first year as a rookie, I was like seeing things that was very shocking, where it's like, it was really like Any Given Sunday, like the movie. Like, I mean, I'm not even like exaggerating. It was really like the movie, where you had a player that we getting our butt whooped, and he just like, all I need is one more sack to get my bonus. And it's like, what?
Wow. Like,
we're losing. We're losing. And I already knew the concept of, like, the more you win, the better opportunity for everybody else to be successful. So it's like, you make it to a Super Bowl, people will pick you up just because you was in the Super Bowl, whether you played or not. They will want you on their team because they know that you know something that got to the Super Bowl. But you had a lot of vets that had that mindset of, like, I'm just getting paid, especially when you're losing. You see it and it sucks, but it's business. Yep. I understand. I figured that out. NFL is really not for long, but in all honesty, it's business. It's money over everything. Like, you win, nice. You lose, you got some teams that's like okay with losing, and you got some players that's like, at least I'm getting paid.
Visiting with Robert Johnson on Utes Insider, presented by Pepsi. And, Robbie, your story is so similar to other athletes I've talked to where they go to the next level and it just doesn't work out. They don't realize until they get there how much of a business it is, or you have a losing culture or coaching changes or a team that says, hey, change your body or change what you do, and that move doesn't work out for them. And for you were a guy who really thrived on just going out and playing free and easy and just using your instincts and making plays and to get to the next level and be told, well, hey, it's a little bit more structured and you have to do it this way. You couldn't be Robert Johnson, is kind of how it sounds. The things that got you there, you weren't allowed to do at the next level.
You're 100% right. It's playing within the system, and sometimes you got selfish players that's on the team. But I mean, for me, I felt like I was never selfish. I did what I need to be doing. But when I see things that I know that I see on film, or things that I've studied, or things that I just naturally know, I was able to use that to my advantage when I was playing at the University of Utah. And it was great because the coaches allowed me to. They allowed me to, and I think Coach Pease. I mean, I thank Coach Pease because he the one that pushed me into that boat of like, Rojo, you have a special gift. Your gift is to be able to see things that some people might not see. You need to use it. And I just remember Coach Pease kept explaining that to me. Rojo, you have something special. Use it, use it, use it. And then my teammates started to push me where it's like, Rojo, you need to start making plays. They knew that they knew I had their backs. That's what I would say. Like Mikey Wright, Steven Sylvester, Kepa Geisen, Sean Smith, Bryce McCain, Joe Dell, Paul Cougar, Greg Newman, Koamisi, Kanape. They all knew that at the end of the day, that if it's something that's being thrown deep, they knew that I was going to be there. Like, and I took pleasure in that. Then when I get to the NFL, it changed. It changed to somebody getting beat, and it's like I see it, and it's like I can't even help out because y'all not allowing me to do some of the things that I see and I want to do. But it took me 3 years to finally take in that I was in the NFL. It took me 3 years to finally realize that it's time to just have fun and just let the dominoes fall the way they're supposed to fall. And I wind up going into my third year just because one of my good friends, Altron Werner, was able to talk to me before the season and explain to me that, Rojo, this is the highest level that you can get when you're playing football. This is the highest level. The next level is Hall of Fame. You need to enjoy it. You need to take in everything. You need to take time to taste the air. You need to take time to smell the roses. And him telling me that, I think that brought out the old Rojo. That brought out I'm just doing this for fun. Like, I'm doing this because this is something that I love doing. And it was able to get me to start. But then I messed up my foot week 14, I think, or week 13. And just things changed after that. Everything changed once you mess up your foot. But it's still a job, though. I mean, NFL is NFL. It's business.
Yep, but you play at the highest level, and that's the hard part. Is there's always someone else looking to take a roster spot. So you get injured, all of a sudden, well, we can move someone else in, and that was the end of the road for you. But Robert, I want to get to some of the things you're doing now. I think it's great that you've now decided that Salt Lake City is your home. You're working for Northwestern Mutual, helping athletes find employment and make that transition from playing sports to careers and getting into the workforce. So just tell us how long you've been with them and some of the things you're doing right now with Northwestern Mutual.
Well, I've been with Northwestern Mutual since October of last year, and I love it. It's the best thing that I've ever been a part of when it comes to giving back to the community of Utah. Like, the mission statement that they had here is basically helping all the communities in Utah be financially secure. And for me, hearing that pulled me in. But then my boss, Todd Grabner, when he told me that he wanted me to be able to talk to athletes, and he said, I don't want you to talk to athletes like for just Northwestern Mutual. I want you to talk to athletes about sharing your story about what you've been through and see if they want to come and take some internship classes or paid internship for a semester or a career changing, because it's a lot of times that us athletes we kind of lose faith when it comes to being removed from sports, because sports has always been our safe haven. And, sports has always been there for us, but then it's 100% chance sports will end. I talk to athletes about that now, where it's 100% chance that it will have to stop. Your body or something will happen and you're just not going to be able to play. But life has to continue. you still have to wake up and breathe. You still got to wake up and pay bills, or you still got to wake up in general. So this is where Northwestern Mutual has placed me in a position where I am talking to all the athletes around the state. And now my role kind of changed up. Just this past 2 weeks, my role kind of changed up where now I'm just focusing on the University of Utah, which is that's where my love is at anyway. That's always been where my heart at. And I talk to all the athletes about being prepared for when sports is over and having internships lined up or have jobs lined up. And with this pandemic happening, this has been the best time for me to talk to athletes about, hey, this is the test of your will right now, because guess what? Sports just ended and you wasn't ready. That's normal for us athletes where a sport will end and you're not ready. But now you got the opportunity to take an internship and it's paid. So you don't have to worry about the NCAA on top of that, like saying, hey, you can't do this. It's like, this is an internship that's going to help brighten the future or get your career ready for when sports is done.
Some great stuff you're doing, and athletes get so caught up in the day-to-day process of being their best and playing and learning, and all of a sudden it just comes to an end, and it usually comes abruptly where you think, okay, I've got some more time or I can play at the next level, and it just doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden that's a rude awakening when all of a sudden it's over and you're like, what do I do next? And I think it's great that guys like yourself who've been through it are coming back to help out on campus. The Ute Academy program that was sort of a relaunched, development program last year has done so well, and having former athletes like yourself take part is invaluable.
This Ute Academy, like I am 100% fully behind this, because this is something that I wish I would have had getting myself ready for college or while I was in college. And when I talked to Ashley about it, and when they told me about it, it made me feel so good, where I'm like, man, my university is really stepping up to the plate of like trying to not just help us be good athletes, but also help us be good human beings when the sports is over. So, I applaud Ashley and Kendall. I love them to death. What they're doing is one of the best things ever. And I tell them all the time, like, hey, like if it's anything I could do, like, please let me know. Like, I want to be there. I want to help. And it's not because I'm getting paid or something that I'm not getting paid. It's more of, I was once that athlete, and I done seen a couple of my boys, once they got done playing at the University of Utah, it just turned into a now what, and Gianna, that's over at the University of football.
Yep, Gianna Colosimo.
Yep, Gianni, and then Maddie. Them two are my girls. I always make sure that I tell them all the time, like, look, I want to help the players because I know what it's like to not know what's next. Like, as soon as I got done with the NFL, yeah, I put my money away. I did good. But it really dawns on you where you don't know what's the next step. And then you're stuck. And it's like bills start adding up. And the worst thing for any athlete, whether you're female or male, is idle time. Especially when you got so used to being an athlete, you never have idle time because you're so used to running on a schedule. But now you got more idle time, and sometimes you can get in trouble. Sometimes trouble can happen, or it's just making some bad decisions because you're not used to having so much time. And this is where I come in at Northwestern Mutual, and this is where I talk to all of them. I let them all know, please reach out to me, please, because I want to help, and it's genuine. It's not I want to get over. I genuinely want to help my University of Utah athletes, no matter what sport it is, with internships and having a plan lined up for when sports is over. And that's where Ute Academy come in at, because that's the biggest thing that they're pushing, is making sure you're prepared for when life hits you in the mouth and sports is over. Now you need to start doing things, jump on it early so you don't have to worry about it later.
Boy, he makes some great points. Again, Gianna Colosimo works with the football program. Ashley Lear, Kendall Robarts Pond, who head up the Utes Academy program, is doing great things. And I think what's cool is guys like you come up, Robert, and this hasn't been because of your work an empty semester. There's no football taking place, at least right now, but internships, educational opportunities, finding ways to develop off the field. It's still there this spring, summer, and fall for these athletes. And now they're going to get an extra year if they want it. So a chance to take a year that in 2020 could have been empty because of guys like you. It's not. It's anything but for some who've taken advantage. So just so happy you've taken the time to come back and to give back to your institution that you were a star player for back in the day. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on the show. And you were always one of my favorite guys as a player. You know, when you and I talked a few weeks ago and you said you want to come on, I'm like, you know what? You're on my list for a reason. I enjoyed covering you. I've enjoyed, seeing you on the sidelines of games here and there and just seeing what you're doing now. You're the type of guy, the type of person that can help us move things in a positive direction. Robert, all the best to you, and thanks for coming on the show.
All right, thank you.
That's Robert Johnson, former Utah All-Conference safety. Back to wrap up the show in just a moment.
For more on Utah athletics, including up-to-date schedules and ticket information, log on to utahutes.com. Now back to more of Utes Insider presented by Pepsi.
Boy, what a fun conversation that was. About 90 minutes with former All-Conference safety Robert Johnson. You know, it's so hard to make it that next level. I know Robert, as he mentioned, was kind of disappointed with the way his pro career ended, but he still played 3 years with the Tennessee Titans from 2010 until 12. A fifth-round draft pick, had a great pro career, but as we talked and later in our conversation, you got a sense of what he's doing now and just how important it is, how passionate he is about being a mentor to athletes coming through the college ranks like himself to help them prepare for what's next and transition into careers, and just great to catch up with Robert, former Ute from 2007 until 9 All-Conference, and then went on to a career in the NFL. Well, some more football talk coming your way next week. Former wide receiver Kevin Dyson, who also played for the Tennessee Titans, will come up. Should be a fun conversation to catch up with Kevin. I got to talk to him a bit a few years ago when he went into the Hall of Fame for Utah Athletics, and will be fun to catch up with Kevin Dyson coming up our next week's show. Thanks to Mike Gillen on the technical side. Until next time, I'm Mike Lageschulte. So long, everybody.
This has been Utes Insider presented by Pepsi. To hear more episodes of this show and other Utah Athletics podcasts, search for them on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube.